Hi, my name's Colton. I'm alcoholic. I am from Little Rock, Arkansas. My sobriety date is December the 12th, 2014. Um, my home group is the Barely Legal Young People's Group. We meet at Tuesday and Saturday at 8 p.m. at Westover Hills Presbyterian Church. If you're ever in Little Rock, please look us up. We've been around. This is our 21st birthday coming up this year, so it's actually pretty amazing. Yeah, so I got invited to speak at this. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experience, strength, and hope, and then I'm going to turn it over to y'all. I did not come prepared with the topic. I'm sorry. I just got off work like 27 minutes ago, so I do apologize for that. All right, so let's get started. As I said, my sobriety date is December 12th, 2014, and I'm going to start at the very beginning, and we'll see how far we get. So I was born to two very unhappy people who believed that having a child would save their marriage. A second child, let me rephrase. And that was not the case. And within about a year, they were divorced. And so I say that because at a very young age, I learned how to manipulate people. I learned how to get what I wanted. I learned how to play one side against the other. And this played a big part in my alcoholism. You fast forward a few years, I'm like 4'0" and I probably weigh like 240 pounds. So I got picked on mercilessly. I was very fat. People made up a story about how fat I was, and I can recite that jingle that they made up to this day. And so I had this feeling from a very young age of being inadequate and not feeling as part of. And the crazy thing was, and was really tough looking back, was that I grew up in a very affluential neighborhood, but I came from a very poor family. And the only reason I lived in that neighborhood was because of the graciousness of somebody else. And because of that, they would have the nice clothes and the new things and all these things that I didn't have, and my family could not afford. So when they were shopping at the mall, I was shopping at Goodwill. My family was shopping at Savers. So I had this entire feeling from, like I said, from a very young age that I was not worthy of being in the presence of other people. So it always made me feel like an outcast. I have one older sister. She's 6 years older than me, and I bring that up because I'm gonna fast forward to my first drink. I was in the 7th grade, and I'll never forget, she picked up Heaven Hill vodka and orange juice, and my mom was out of town. And her reasoning was, it was me and a couple of my best friends. Her reasoning was this. She said, "You're going to drink eventually. I'd rather you do it in a safe place," which is, very commonplace from what I've heard throughout my time in the rooms. And what proceeded to happen was that one of my friends got so wasted that he soiled himself and had to, be left in the bath overnight. One decided he wanted to run out and go streaking in the streets. And I happened to wake up next to her best friend, who was a very beautiful woman, I might add. And like, I can't say anything happened. At the time, I wanted to believe something happened. So I had this feeling of like invincibility. I don't remember anything that happened that night. All I remember is waking up and feeling like this is exactly how my life needs to be. We had a basketball game the next morning, actually. And one of the friends from the party the night before was literally vomiting his guts out, and you could hear him in the bathroom while we're in the middle of a basketball game. I proceeded to have the best game of my season, which for me was not great, but it wasn't bad. And so I believe that I truly believe that I had formed some kind of superpower from drinking the night before. And when you're in the 7th grade, it's really hard to get your hands on alcohol all the time, but I did it. Every turn I could get my hands on it. And, as I got older, I grew into my body a bit more. My family fortunes changed, I guess. We came up a little bit in society, and so I wasn't as much of an outsider when I was in my early teens. But the reality was, like, all those feelings that I had suppressed and I had when I was a child, like, they were still there. I hadn't done any work on them. I just had more opportunity and more money to get what I wanted. And I was just hell on wheels, man. Like, I remember I was 12 years old. I snuck out my mom's car. It was the first time I'd ever outran the cops in a vehicle. And that started a new theme in my life for my teens, which was that I was going to do a bunch of dumb stuff. I was going to drink whenever I could, and there was going to be no repercussions for my actions. This is what I learned in what I look back and think is like some of the most important years of my life, was that I was just untouchable. And so you fast forward a little bit more, and my mom had to travel for work, and I was basically raised by my mom at this point. And she hated my dad so much that she would leave me at home by myself, and she would give me a bunch of money because she felt bad for leaving, and like would give me free reign over the house. And what would happen is I would throw exorbitant parties. I would get as drunk as humanly possible. I would hook up with as many people as possible and I treated people as objects. And the cops would come knock on my door, and it got to the point where they were never going to arrest me, but they knew me by a first name, and they'd literally be like, Colton, what are you doing? Like that was the conversation that we had. So when I talk about there was no consequences for my action or my drinking, that was the case. And I'll give you a glimpse into how messed up thinking I was. I remember I cheated on this girlfriend I had, and I went and bought a pint of Evan Williams, and I went up in my room, and she found out that I cheated on her, and I drank because I was upset that she had found out. I didn't drink because I had done it or that I had harmed her. I drank because she had found out and that my secret was out. And that's the kind of person I was. It was completely all about me all the time. How did I feel about things? So because of like my lifestyle that I lived in high school, which started venturing off into drugs, I'm going to add that in my story. I'm not going to talk about them, but that did happen. Because of that, my grades suffered and like my life suffered. And so I grew up around all these people who had plans to go to college and were going to go off and do these great things in life. And like I had no plan. So when that time came and all my drinking buddies ran out after we graduated high school, I was still at my mom's house in her attic, basically. And the drinking became much, much more regular at this point. It was an everyday occurrence. It was the only way I knew how to escape the failure that was my life. And that was the reality to me. I firmly believe for a good chunk of my life that I was going to be one of those people that gets made fun of for peaking in high school. Like that is what I thought my life was going to turn out into. And as my drinking and drug use got worse and worse and worse, I started needing money more and more and more. And it got really bad and really dark. And I did some things that caused me to get in trouble with the law finally. And it all finally caught up to me. And when it caught up in a big way. And so I remember, I went to court for the first time, and the judge was like, you need to go to some form of rehabilitation if you want to have a chance at life and staying out of my courtroom. So I went to rehab for the first time. And that was amazing. It was like I was great in rehab because it was a structured environment. It was something that made me do X, Y, and Z all throughout the day. I had this, and this. And I can do really well with structure. I have no self-discipline whatsoever. When you take me out of a structured environment, like I'm going to mess up. I'm going to drink. I'm going to destroy every relationship and everything I have in my life just because I can, because I don't know how to stop it. And at that time, that was my first introduction to AA, like as a whole. And I had some friends who had gotten sober very young, and they're still great friends to this day. I was actually in one of them's wedding last year, but he got sober when he was 15 years old. And so when I stepped in the room of Alcoholics Anonymous at Barely Legal, which is my home group to this day, he was there. There were people I knew there. So it was a very comforting experience for me. I know not everyone has that, but that's my experience. I felt comforted by the fact there were people who knew me. But at the same time, I felt a lot of guilt, shame, and remorse because they also knew what I had done to get there. And I did a really good job at that point of faking it to make it. I went and did all the hanging out things. I went and met the young people. I got involved. But the truth was, like, I did not work any steps whatsoever. I found the sponsor that was closest to me in age, who had had some similar life experiences, because I knew I could manipulate that sponsor. And that was my entire goal. I wanted you to see what I felt you should see, not the real inside of me. Because if you saw the real inside of me, you would see that I'm just a low down, dirty alcoholic. And I remember my first 4-step was a half a page long. And it was one paragraph. And he believed me. He truly believed that's all that should have been on my 4-step. And like we had this whole like deal with burning it afterwards, and it was kumbaya, and it was great. And I could go tell all my friends that I'd made in AA that, yeah, I did my 4th and 5th step. I'm here. I've earned my seat. But the truth was, like, as much as I could hide it from people, like I was not going to be able to hide it from myself. And so within 6 months, I was out back doing my thing again. And this time the consequences got a lot worse. So at that point, the state of Arkansas decided that they needed to take control of my life for up to 15 years. And that was a terrifying experience. I'm not going to go into details about what it was like, but it changed the way I view a lot of things. And I remember I'm gonna bring up one conversation I had, and the day I got arrested was the first day I got sober. And I had a conversation with somebody in jail who had been there for a long time, was facing a lot of time. He was 18 years old. He had killed someone, and he'd already been in about 14 years. He's in there for the rest of his life. And we had the same hobby of reading. Like, I love to read. And he asked me, he was like, "Why are you here?" And I told him what I'd done. And he was like, no, why are you really here? And I told him the truth is I'm just an alcoholic and a drug addict, and I don't know how to get out of my own way. And he's like, you don't need to be here. So when you ever get a chance to get out of here, go do something with your life. And of course, the alcoholic in me, now that I was in a structured environment, I'd come up with all these great plans for how I was going to attack life. So the day comes that they tell me that I'm getting released about a year earlier than I expected. I did not do 15 years. And my nerves were shot. My mom picked me up from prison that day. And we went to lunch. And I was visibly shaking. Like, my nerves were so rattled that, like, I looked like I had just come off a bender. And she asked me at lunch, she's like, "Do you want a beer?" And I was like, "No." And that was the first time I can honestly say in my entire life that I turned down free alcohol at my own volition. I said, it was a Tuesday, and I was like, "I'd love to go to my meeting." So she dropped me off. And I wish I could say that it was easy. It was one of the hardest things I ever had to do, was go back into that meeting. That was my home group. Because even though nobody said anything, it's like in my mind, I could hear them saying these things about what I had done and how I got there. And that was my alcoholic brain talking to me the entire time. I started having a panic attack. And so I was like, I got to get out of here. And I went and I composed myself. And then I walked outside because I was going to leave. I didn't know where my life was going to take me from that moment on. I knew that either I was going to kill myself or I was going to go get drunk. And there was somebody out there that stepped out to smoke a cigarette during the meeting, which is very rare in today's world, to be honest with you. And he said, "Colton," he stopped me. He had known me since high school. He said, "Colton, just stop and wait. Please, just stop and wait. I have somebody I want you to talk to." So I did. I had nowhere else to go. And that person ended up becoming my sponsor and still my sponsor to this day. What it looked like from there was that I haven't drank. I've worked all 12 steps. I got involved in my home group. I became GSR of that home group. I got involved in YPAA. YPAA has been a big part of my sobriety. Currently, I am the secretary of Arkypaa, which is the Arkansas Conference of Young People in AA. If you've never been and you want to go, it's probably something worth looking at. It's completely different than anything you've ever been to in your entire life. I'm also on the advisory council for the Southeastern Regional Conference of Young People in AA, which will be hosted in Virginia this upcoming year. So please make every attempt to go to that. And what YPAA did was it gave me the ability to get outside of myself and see that there was a bigger world outside of alcohol. It's just inside of myself, inside of my little town. You know, my home group's 30, 40 people at most on a good night. It made me real. And I was thinking about that when I was kind of intimidated by the participants list over on the right. And I was like, you know, nobody wants to look at that. But then I saw there was 75 people. And then I saw that it was people from Denver and people from Massachusetts and all these different places across the country. And I'm like, I have to talk in front of these people. This is not enjoyable for me. But the reality is, like, AA has given me this gift. It has given me this opportunity to be here at this exact moment. The last thing I wanted to do after working 13 hours today is come here. But I am very glad that y'all have invited me to do so. Tell you a little bit about life since I got sober and since all of this happened. I went to college. I graduated college. When I got out, I was sleeping on my mom's couch. I had the clothes on my back. I had no dollars in my pocket. I walked to meetings. I walked to work. It took me about 6 months to find a job, but I did. And then I went to college and I worked 40 hours a week and put myself through college. I did all the things that I said I was going to do when I was a teenager, when I believed that my life still meant something. And what AA has given me is the fact that I believe my life is going to continue to get better. I don't believe that my life is just steadily a decline from where it was when I first came in these rooms. I don't wake up every single day hating seeing sunlight. I don't feel like I have to take a drink every single day. The thought of a drink, sometimes I get very jealous, because when you see newcomers who come in and they really want it, you can see how much they need it. And sometimes I forget how much I need AA, because the reality is I've been sober for a little bit of time now. And it's like, was I ever really as hungry as I see some of these people are now? I've been given a great gift. Life, all the material things I've ever wanted, given to me. All the friendships I thought I'd lose, I got better ones. I've rebuilt every single relationship with my family to the point that I get mad when they call me. And that's my alcoholic mind. Because for me, it's like, if you're calling me constantly, I have better stuff to do. But there's a time that nobody would take my phone call. You know what I mean? It's just like, that is what my mind will tell me. That is what my alcoholic brain will tell me, that it's all about me. I could tell you a million war stories about how I got to the point of where I am now. I could tell you all the drinking stories in the world, but it's just not worth it anymore. It like doesn't excite me. It doesn't sound good to say. All I can tell you is, if like without the unity and recovery of AA, I don't know where I would be in my life. I probably would not be alive, or I would have harmed someone else. What's that look like for the future? I don't fucking know. I really don't. The reality is, like, I just wake up every single day and I ask my higher power not to let me drink for that day. And a wise man I've met in AA has told me that I've never seen somebody go back to drinking who wakes up every morning and says, please, and before he goes to bed says, thank you. And that's all I do. I do that every single day. And I try to make little bitty gains of who I am as a person. I feel like if I can be a little bit better of a person, a little bit better of an Alcoholics Anonymous member every single day, eventually it all adds up. Because the reality is, I can't see the changes in myself. When I look in a mirror, I still see the beat down alcoholic that I was. I still see the felon that I was. I still see all of these things that are deep down inside of me that my alcoholic brain tells me I need to let out. So I come here and I get my medicine. I come here and I listen to y'all. I'm not going to go for 30 minutes. I would love to. I could probably talk all night long, but I really am interested in hearing what y'all have to say. So thank you so much for allowing me to speak, and I hope that you got something out of it.